Hello!
Hello. This is the audio podcast, show number 58. It's the 11th of June, 2012. Yay!
I'm Samuel Freeman, that's Scott Hewitt, and we're joined by Jesse...
Allison.
Hello! Allison, hello.
So Jesse's joining us from ElectroTap, who are known for tap tools, Jamola, involvement in the Jamola project, I should probably say, hemispherical speakers and sensors, and the T-Box. So we're going to just have we're going to ask him a couple of questions about the T-Box and hemispherical speakers and stuff like that, and any other things that ElectroTap have got kind of brewing, and then we'll get into our normal kind of show content after that. That is the plan. If you want to follow on with any show notes or anything like that, as always, you can find them on our website, which is a new website. But we won't say anything about the new website other than it's at theaudiopodcast.co.uk, and this is show 58, which is hopefully easy to find. Cool. So, the T-Box. So, our show is Will MIDI Ever Die? And this strikes me as one of the kind of things that might kill MIDI one day, if it ever was to die. Could you, what is the T-Box for people who don't know?
So the T-Box is a sensor interface, high speed, high resolution, and darn near indestructible. Just basically solves a lot of the normal problems that sensor interfaces have. So.
And what do you mean when you say high speed and high resolution then?
Well, it's basically each sample or each sensor gets captured about 4,000 times per second, and it's at 12 bits. Could have gone up, but most of our sensors don't even give out a resolution that's that high. So 12 bits works out pretty well. And then basically the sort of unique thing about it is it transmits all of its sensor data over SPDIF audio, so digital audio. And that way all the audio is synchronized with your sensors. So if you have audio that's being processed by sensor data, it's all coming in at the same time, same rate. And it actually comes in as audio, and so you can apply things directly through just traditional synthesis techniques. You can also slow it down if you need to make it run for controlling graphics and that sort of thing. But it comes in at a high rate, high res, so that you can use it directly right like that.
Awesome stuff. So. It sounds like it's going to fix all those kind of problems related to things like MIDI resolution and just the kind of general sort of serial timing problems that you get with MIDI. But I suppose the one major defense of MIDI that still exists is the fact that it's kind of universally everywhere and really easy to kind of work with. What's it like trying to work with the T-Box system?
Well, basically, with the T-Box, you just plug in your sensors and you bring it in. It depends on what you're using. We distribute objects for Macs to bring it in real easy. We've got Super Collider and PD objects to do. Then we also have just an application that can translate it into OSC or MIDI if you really need it to get into whatever you want. But that's kind of how that goes. It's will MIDI ever die? I don't think it's going to. It's going to be a long time before we can actually kill that off. I think OSC has the best chance, though. I think, things are taking off with that, so I'm happy to see that.
From a programming solution, I think the idea of the T-Box using SPDIF audio that's something I've actually experimented with myself as well, because it's something that is easy. It's easy to transfer audio from audio signals from one place to the other place. Digital cables, they're readily available. The kind of all the connectors and stuff are readily available as well. So there's lots of really great things about using audio kind of stuff. And I'd argue one of the limitations of OSC in terms of wider adoption is that while it works nicely across an Ethernet cable, it doesn't necessarily work well across like audio cables and things like that, which people maybe have more readily available to themselves. So
there's also that. Most people send OSC via UDP, which if your packet doesn't get there, well, you don't know. You can use the protocol over TCP, but I don't know very many implementations that actually do that. With the digital audio approach, though, one of the things we really liked about it was basically audio is really demanding, and so people have made their devices to withhold or stand up to that. You know, you don't want to have even a signal vector, you know, of delay, because then you get your pops and your clicks and all that sort of stuff. And so they end up being really robust devices. And for us, we just sort of piggybacked off of that, and when you send the digital audio across, it comes in really low latency, basically as low latency as you can get on your computer, or at least, yeah, without some really hardcore stuff. Anyway, so you can get things down to really small numbers of milliseconds, 4 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds of delay, round trip. It's really pretty crazy.
That's really cool stuff. So is the idea of the system that it might eventually see kind of embedding in devices in the way that MIDI is, or is it more just for more kind of specialist boutique kind of situations?
We made it for a specialist boutique sort of situation. Basically, Tim Place and I, this was back in 2003, 2004 when we were developing it. Basically, we had a need for this system for some installations that we were doing that we needed really low latency and really high speed. And so that's actually how ElectroTap started, believe it or not. Before that, we had been doing a lot of open source stuff and giving things away and doing shareware type stuff. And when this one came along, when we wrote a couple papers on different approaches to sensor systems, and when we came across this idea with the SPDIF, basically to make it for ourselves, it was going to cost a lot of money, like tens to 20s of thousands of dollars to get this thing produced. Sort of in the dark ages of DIY, when not much was out there, so it was really tricky. But so anyway, what happened was to finance this thing. We tried a bunch of different ways to get it financed, and the way that we ended up doing it was we basically sunk a ton of money, went into debt, and then started a business, thinking that if we needed it, somebody else might, and eventually we'll sell out. A couple years later, we paid it all off, and we're doing just fine. But yeah, that was a little hairy. Our wives looked askance at us when we first started that endeavor.
Cool. So do you still have T-Boxes available for sale then?
We do. In fact, we just released the naked T-Box, which is basically a chassis-less version. It's funny, when we made it with this wonderful metal chassis and everything. You can actually jump on the thing while it's running and have it not skip a beat. But you know, that was also the most expensive single part on the entire thing. So to cut costs down and be able to sell it a little cheaper, we're selling a bare version, just the circuit board, and you can wire in whatever you want.
And is that do they ship worldwide?
They do.
And how much are they? I guess let's just do the final.
Oh yeah. It is $199 for the naked T-Box, and then they are, well, I haven't looked at this in a while. I think it's $395 for the regular version. Although we may have dropped the price on that. We did. It is $295. Well, there you go.
Awesome stuff.
We haven't said how many sensors you can run through this thing at once.
Right. Well, we kept it kind of modest. Basically, there are 8 analog sensors that sample 4,000 times a second, 12 bits. And then there are 16 toggles, which also sample at 4,000 times per second. So, for instance, one of the things we've done in the past is if you needed more sensor inputs, you can actually do like pulse width modulation or that sort of thing, and then just it's low res at that point, but it's up at about the MIDI. It's comparable to MIDI range of those, so you can use those as further inputs if you need it. So that's that. We also, the T-Box itself has a bunch of different connections, which I think is kind of interesting. We like to use ours with XLR connectors, just because everybody, well, most of the people in our field anyway, have XLRs lying around, and you can just plug them in if you need it to go longer. But you can also, yeah, very rugged. But you can also plug in tip ring sleeve, and then there's also a 3-pin header. And in the back of the box, there's actually RJ11 jacks, which are like telephone-type cables. And you can bundle 4 sensors on one cable and just run out one line for ways.
So
Yeah.
it's really useful. It's really designed to be kind of very flexible, but also kind of rugged enough to tour, but also useful in a kind of installation environment as well.
Right, right. Yeah, it's one of those things. I've had it running an installation for months, which has been really nice. In fact, I had an installation get hit by lightning once, and all I did was reboot the computer, and it all came back up. So it was great.
That's impressive. That's impressive. Cool. Well, I guess just finally, I know something else that you brought on ElectroTap have started doing more recently is just the hemispherical speakers, which have been popularized by the laptop performance kind of crowd. I'm thinking of Slork and Blork and people like this. So can you just tell us a little bit about the hemispherical that you're offering at the moment?
Yeah. Actually, this is another story. We've been selling them for quite a while as unpowered versions. And that was through Stephen Moore, a friend of ours who had done a lot of design and wanted to just have a way to sell them. And so recently, he's actually spun off his own company called Isabel Audio. And from that, we're basically doing the reselling of the hemispheres. And he's made powered versions, which are awesome. We've had so many requests for powered versions of these things. But in the past, there have been a lot of heat issues and just the expense of making them. But we were able to do it. And anyway, you can check them out on our site or check them out on Isabel's site. Basically, there's a 6-pin connector in it, so you can actually address all 6 of the speakers on the hemisphere individually, spatialize them however you want. And then when you buy one, you get 2 cables, one that just goes out to mono, so you can run one signal across the whole thing, or you can run 6 channels RCA into it and then spatialize it however you want. Cool.
Awesome stuff. I had the opportunity to hear one at SLEO earlier on this year, and it did sound pretty. It sounded kind of awesome, actually. I liked it. I thought it was kind of fun. It seemed a nice kind of mobile sort of package as well, in terms that you could pick it up and carry it around as well, which is nice as well. I think
yeah, it's pretty handy. Actually, maybe I should say something about the reason for hemispherical speakers. If you don't know about them, basically they're designed to be a point source. It's a bunch of research that Dan Truman had done many years ago that kind of spawned this. But essentially, when you have an electronic instrument, the idea behind it is if you're pumping it out of just like a stereo set of speakers or something like that, or on stage and you have a reference monitor, you're disembodied from wherever your sound is being produced from your instrument. Whereas like if you're playing a violin, then the sound is coming right from that body, right, and then emanating out to the room and then reflecting and then reaching the ears of the people listening. And there's a lot of a very different experience from having that be coming from a specific point in space, as opposed to just being like having the stereo field that has all that audio coming. And so the idea of this is to be, this hemisphere is the body of your instrument, and so it comes from that point, interacts with the room, and then reaches the listeners, a lot like a traditional instrument would, or an acoustic instrument would. And there's a lot of debate about that approach, but I know that when I've done it and made the change, it significantly changed the way that I played, and in a lot of ways the way that I enjoyed what I was doing, because I could tell how my sound was mixing with other performers and that sort of thing. You end up being like this sort of chamber ensemble as opposed to being this just wall of sound. Now, if you want the wall of sound, this is probably not the way you want to go, but if you want to have that kind of more intimate approach musically, it works out really well.
That's very true. I've used in a jazz group that I play, I've actually used bows have a kind of long, thin stick kind of thing, which explores a similar idea. And we switched to using them for a little bit to play, and actually found it gave a nice level of reinforcement as much as you needed really, but had a much more kind of natural and organic sort of sound for the actual listeners, but also for the performers in terms of being able to monitor much better what you could hear and what you didn't hear, and you didn't have to worry about monitor mixes and such like that. So I think it's a nice kind of way. And I found experience has taught me that whenever I go to a gig and they're doing that kind of that sort of reinforcement, it's always usually a nice kind of sensible sound level as well. You don't have to deal with that kind of incredibly loud blast from the front.
That's true.
It just doesn't happen, which is always a nice sound, I find. Is what I do.
I was at a concert recently where it was very much like that, and all of a sudden they started, and they had the person in the back mixing the house and everything, and they started playing, and it was just incredibly loud. And so I looked back at the person mixing, and he had just put his earplugs in and just kept it up. So I don't know if they'd requested it or something, but oh man, that was painful.
That's always a bad sign. That's always a bad sign. Well, Jesse, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you about it. Could you tell people where they can find out more about yourself and more about ElectroTap?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the ElectroTap is just electrotap.com. There's plenty of stuff there. There's if you want to look at more of the hemispherical stuff, there's Isobel Audio, ISOBEL audio.com, which is great. And then my own personal site, I actually teach over at Louisiana State University in the experimental music program there. And you can get to me through allisonic.com, ALLISONIC.com. And there you go.
Awesome stuff. And Ivor Samurai will make sure it gets added into the show notes at the end of the show, so they'll be there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Check out as well. Cool. Well, I don't know if you want to hang around and talk for the other news items or not, but if you choose to, that's fine. If not, that's also fine, I guess. Feel free to bail if you want to or not. We'll head through them as well. I'm going to invite in our kind of listener circle now that we've done the bit that we need to make sure we get right, and then just for fun. Sam, do you want to start us off with the next item while I do that?
Oh, actually, I'm going to have to run, but thank you guys both, and
okay.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing the rest of it.
Cool.
Okay, Jesse, thanks. See you later.
Bye.
Okay, so I'm at theaudiopodcast.co.uk/show/58, which is the new way of finding our notes. And after that, the next thing we have up is... Oh, you know what, Scott? I'm going to skip a bit. I'm going to skip down to some stories that I actually added. I think we're going to follow on from the hemispherical speakers there to a dodecahedron speaker.
Okay, go for it. That's fine.
Yep. So this is something that I spotted posted on Instructables last week. So if you've got access to a 3D printer, you can download the patterns to print out parts to construct your own spherical speaker. Six-sided. This is it's only a mono input, so you haven't got individually addressable things, and all the acoustic treatment stuff. So it's pretty lo-fi in some respects, but it also looks cool. And the whole DIY thing, like you were saying, in the past few years, it's kind of exploded, and the availability of this technology where we can print out precision parts, building this kind of thing by hand would be very difficult because of the angles involved. So yeah, there you go. That's something I spotted and added in as I thought it'd be interesting. It looks cool.
It does indeed, and that's that's cool stuff. I'm going to swing us back to the top of the notes now.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm going to work my way down them, but that's fine. It was good of you to grab that while I just sorted a couple of bits out there. I was really cool about that. So TC Helicon have announced a new product comparison feature on their website, which is pretty cool. It basically allows you to go looking for their products, and you can, compare all the products they have available and go looking for them, kind of on a whole variety of different kind of parameters and things. So if you're interested in a particular feature, or, you know what you need on your device, but you just don't know what it's going to, what kind of options there are out there, it's a nice, easy way to kind of go looking for them and looking for options, looking for options to work with as well. So
yep, so you can compare up to 3 at a time on that. Very cool.
Which is a very cool feature as well. Now, happening right now, which part of the reason why I think we had a bit of disarray at the start of the show, because I wasn't paying full attention to the time either, but the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference is starting today, and the keynote is probably still underway right now. So it was kind of fun. I thought, as I was putting together the show notes this afternoon, I thought I would quickly put some predictions as to what I thought would happen. So I'm happy to report that I didn't do. I don't know how well I did or didn't do yet, because there could always be and something else at the end of the keynote which I missed. But I don't know yet. What they did announce though, which I think we'll talk about a lot more next week, was the new style MacBook Pro, which has featured a massive update. Sam, have you seen anything about this yet, or?
Yeah, I've managed to find some kind of semi-real-time updates on it. So the MacBook Pro is looking picture. So what we've got more SIG stuff.
Well, they've got the new MacBook Pro screens are coming with the kind of Retina level kind of resolution screens on them now, of 200 dpi on the display. So it's actually almost a 4K screen, which is 4 times what you would call 1080p, what you would call a high definition screen. So it's a massive size screen. They've also, something I noticed is they've dropped FireWire support completely from that device. It has twin Thunderbolt, so you could obviously go Thunderbolt to FireWire if you wanted to. But they've dropped support for FireWire. It's gone from there. You get USB 3 on the box as well. So you know, it's nice to see. I was always a little bit nervous that Apple might kind of say, like they did with FireWire, they said, right, we'll have FireWire and USB 2 turned up eventually. Whereas here, it's nice that they're not going to push Thunderbolt at the cost of USB 3. They're supporting the two side by side straight away. I think this is the death of the Mac Pro. He says, being fully aware that they may just have announced a revision in the last 20 minutes while we've been running this show. But, I don't see why you would buy a Mac Pro when you could. The pricing suggested it was going to be just over $2,000 for that device, and with the exception of people who are buying things and don't want their employees to be able to wander off and lose their laptops, I don't see why you would buy a desktop rather than a device now at that price and with that feature set. What do you think, Sam?
Well, it's just people selling things, isn't it? I think.
You got to admit that's an awesomely capable device, though, for audio.
It is. Maybe I'm just a stick in the mud, but I haven't actually seen any of these Retina displays with my own eyes yet. I just don't quite see the point, because they say that this new MacBook Pro is going to be a bit bigger than the 13-inch one that I have here, but you can have a hell of a lot. You can have twice as many pixels on there or more.
Yeah.
Is it? You're going to fit more. Does that mean you're going to fit more things on, but you won't be able to see them? You're going to have fonts larger. If you're talking actual pixels.
You see, I'm a big fan of these Retina displays because I sit here on a daily basis. Like, for people who have ever visited me where I work or not, I'm saying I'm actually here right now I got 3 different computers running right now doing various different things. Let me do this. And the only thing that prevents one of these computers doing it is purely a real estate issue. Just there isn't enough pixels on the screen to be able to do everything. Like, I could probably go to one computer if I could have a 4K. If I had a cinema display, I dare say I'd be able to run everything off one cinema display. But it's cheaper to have multiple computers than it is to run a cinema display. And there's other advantages to having lots of computers as well. So that's why I do it that way. But being able to see lots of things on the screen at the same time it is nice and is really useful. I'm saying you can imagine it inside a big Pro Tools session or a big Logic session, being able to see everything and have all the windows. You wouldn't need to have windows on top of windows and having to switch between them all, those kind of things. It's nice having that screen real estate, I think.
I agree, and that's something that's important, having that stuff. However, if start increasing font sizes and having things bigger or even reduce 2 feet further away. So I don't know, if the laptop's all wired in with lots of sound cards and if every hole is filled with something on the side, then you don't want to be touching it and moving it around. So I usually sit back with the USB keyboard, and in those situations, well, I usually have a second monitor going for extra stuff, but the stuff which is on one screen, I need it to be bigger, not smaller. That's just my thought on it. I'm happy that there's probably all sorts of great things about it that I haven't considered, and I'm sure for watching feel great and good for the future, but I'm just not sold on it as it in of itself.
Oh, fair enough. No, that's okay. Well, let's move on, because I'm sure we're going to talk about WWDC more in the more next week once the whole week's been through and all the announcements are done, and we've kind of got all the information in the way we can reference back to it as well, because iOS 6 will be there, and there's a whole load of chatter about the next version of OS X as well, and how the convergence between them is going to work or not. So let's move on. Should we move on? I think we should move on. Let's move on.
Yeah. What's next then?
Let's wander on. The reason for our title,
MIDI.
MIDI in the browser ARG was how I wanted to report the show. So apparently, I'm amazed. Well, I'm not amazed. It's obvious that this would happen, but the W3 have released the first draft specification for MIDI playback implemented directly within the browser under HTML5. Now, the reason I went MIDI in the browser R is because I remember the early days of the internet where you would get to a web page and it would start playing some horrific piece of MIDI, like kind of like.
They were great. Embed, the embed tag. That's how you get your MIDI file in.
Yeah. So this is. It just amazes me. I'm saying MIDI it just won't die. It just lives forever, doesn't it? You just you know what I mean, in terms of functionality, and it just horrifies me, the fact that it continues on.
The kind of like the way a lot of people in the world think about music is in terms of notes and pitches and things happen on and off, and that's it. And MIDI accommodates for all of that perfectly fine. There's a lot more to sound and music than what MIDI provides, but MIDI perfectly addresses what most people think of as necessary, and so there it is.
Maybe I just yeah. Anyway, it's there. If you're interested in how MIDI support in HTML5 is going to work, it is an open draft specification now, so you can contact. There's a process to be involved in. You can contact suggestions or complaints, and they are They are discussing how the actual core implementation is going to be done. I was really excited to see there's a consideration of the security issues immediately at the top of it there, which is an important thing. The earlier ways of doing MIDI embed used to be very vulnerable under kind of 3.4 and stuff like that. So it's nice that they put in a lot more consideration into how it's going to be handled and stuff like that as well. So MIDI lives on. But while MIDI does live on, and unfortunately the same can't be said for Bias.
No, Bias is dead. According to this.
Bias dead. Peak isn't, well, Peak dead. The authorization servers are still running, as they've said. It'd be interesting to see what happens later, eventually. I'm saying you can't run an authorization server for free forever. It costs money to run it, support it. So is Peak dead? Will Peak be sold? Will they do something else with it? I don't know. Do you have any experience working with Peak?
Not much, but Peak was kind of always the de facto wave editor on sound editor on Mac, wasn't it? Like in the past. I mean, the fact that I had that was the impression I had before, when I was still primarily a Windows user. I mean, since buying my first MacBook and using this kind of. Well, I haven't been using it. Prior to switching, I probably thought that I would, but maybe that's symptomatic of whatever it is they've disappeared. But would you say that's a fair assessment of how it used to be viewed?
I would agree. I'm saying I always remember it being SoundForge on Windows. Right? Yeah, it was SoundForge, wasn't it? Yeah, SoundForge on Windows, Peak on Mac. That was always the way, wasn't it? I wonder if part of the reason they've struggled is because of the way that the open source tools have really developed. Like, things like Audacity obviously give a lot of the functionality, not the really high level functionality, but how many people really need that, and how many people are willing to get by on using something like Audacity based on the fact it's free and free. And at the same time, you think of something like GarageBand, which is now bundled, on every new Mac. Are there that many people who need more than what they can do in GarageBand that are willing to go out and spend the money on something like Peak? I don't know. I guess not having any direct experience, I can't tell you what the super killer feature that Peak does that something like that you can't do inside Logic. But I suspect there aren't that many things that that Logic can't do that Peak did that many people would need, if that makes sense.
And then thinking about high-end market, like if you want to have a dedicated audio editor that's going to have advanced features that perhaps not everybody probably is the first thing that comes to mind now for me. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, well, such as it is. Yeah. So moving away from something that's dead to something that's new. They say. Motu have rolled out a new, announced a new audio interface, the Track 16, and this looks pretty. I thought this looked pretty incredible, actually. As long-time listeners to our show will know, I have a mixed relationship with Motu. I use their hardware all the time. I think it's great. It's invincible, but they won't supply me any Linux drivers, so my future with them is over. But it's still cool hardware. And this Track 16 it looks, well, have you seen a picture of it? It looks incredible, first of all. It's an incredible kind of look.
I've just loaded it. I've just seen it for the very first time, and it looks like a cross between the Uno, the One thing.
Yeah.
Who makes that? I don't know. And it also reminds me of the propeller head thing. What do they call that? Sorry, my brain's gone dead. Remember, it looks like two things I can think of, but can't remember the names. That's great contributions.
That's awesome stuff. Saying quickly describe it for our listeners. You've got a nice set of buttons in front of you. It's a set of buttons. There's a big dial in the middle of it, and then a set of meters on the front. It's designed to sit on your desktop and look cool. That's like this isn't a massive chunk of metal. It's designed to look cool. It has a breakout cable on the back of it, which can either go to cable or actually go to a breakout box. So you can, if you want to, have that kind of big chunk of metal box sitting around as well to link the two together, which I think is a really cool kind of way of running that sort of interface.
This definitely means that you can have that nice tidy box on your desk with the buttons and the knob and the LEDs, but you haven't got to have all of your jacks and stuff all going into it as well. You can have them elsewhere. That's a really clever way of making it neat and tidy.
It definitely is, isn't it? In terms of functionality, as they've kind of said themselves, it is the same internals as a Mark III, as the Mark III interface, hybrid interfaces, so the ultralight and the 828s and Mark III ones. And in terms of connectivity, it's actually a combination. It's a nice combination of the two of them. So you have the smaller size connectivity of the ultralight, so you don't have XLR outs on it. It's just TRS outs. But you do get ADAT on it, which you don't get on an ultralight. So it's a nice kind of mix of connectivity, which I think will put it in a great position for kind of home, for kind of a more customer-facing environment. If you're doing some sort of post-production video or something like that, and you've got clients watching in, this is a kind of neat solution rather than needing to have massive racks in the way and things like that. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of a nice solution for that kind of thing as well. Runs at 24-bit, 192K, so kind of full res audio in there as well. I like it. I thought it was cool. Yeah.
Yep, I think that's very good.
I'm still planning on selling either my 828 my Mark II 828 or my ultralight though, my Mark III ultralight. So if anybody's interested, give me a shout. That's mainly because I need something with some proper Linux support. So yeah.
I've just a couple of things on the connections around the side of it. It's got five. So you said as you say, it's got USB 2 and FireWire, which is 400, but the connector is a 800 shaped connector.
Oh,
that's interesting to me. I mean, that's I find that useful. It means that I can have a 800 to 800 cable.
Well,
putting it down to the 400 even.
Yeah. Well, 800, and you can obviously connect to a 400 device from an 800 port. You just need a cable to do the physical connection thing. So.
Yep, so they've given the physical shape of the upper one, but using the lower speed. Why not?
Yeah, that's cool. Well, yeah. So if we move on, Sam, I think you put this story in here. this next story in?
Okay, yep, so we've mentioned the dodecahedron speaker. But the next one is what's new in Reason 6.5. This is not that new anymore. It probably would have we missed the show last week, didn't we? So I think this was that even last Monday that it was released? Anyway, they've got a video out there, and I've actually, in celebration of I am excited about this kind of stuff. Yeah, so what's new? We've mentioned this is happening already, so the rack extensions is what's new, and it's in Reason 6.5 and Reason Essentials 1.5. And I'm excited, in short, because it opens up the rack to having all kinds of stuff in there. And I've posed the question at the end, how long will it be before someone gets something like PD or Super Collider running in the rack? That's kind of, sure, there's going to be loads of compressors and filters and kind of all the stuff that you would expect to get as VSTs, kind of like being reported across into here and new things made, especially for the rack extensions. But what can you I'd like to see different things being put in there, just because it makes things more exciting. I think that it can open up music making beyond what we generally think of in terms of signal processing and stuff. I mean, why would it? I don't know exactly what the limitations of the SDK would be, but you can imagine buying a rack extension which could connect to something like that ElectroTap box, the T box, so you can have sensors coming in there, converting analog inputs into control voltages to use elsewhere in the rack or things like that. I don't know. I think, yeah, it feels like a milestone. That Propellerheads have been making solid software. I mean, whether you're interested in it or not, it's kind of their technology is used by a lot of other developers, things like Rewire and Rex, and I think it's going to continue to be so for a long time. So it's an interesting time in terms of newness. That's all.
Cool. Awesome stuff. Well, I'm aware that our time is flying by, so we should let's just keep pushing on. Maybe. I think I got here as well. We go into our imaginatively named other section, which is just fantastic. Yeah. So the only thing I wanted to mention is that we actually do have a new website up and running, and it's live. This is the first week we've had it running. First of all, the URL is theaudiopodcast.co.uk, so you no longer need to put wiki dot in front of it. The wiki site does still exist. I haven't really worked out what we're going to do with that. We'll work that out eventually. There is a chance if the podcast should just work. It should continue to work, and all my testing seems to support the idea that it will just keep working. But if you turn up here and you haven't got it, it's because the podcast is now at podcast.theaudiopodcast.co.uk. So the actual audio feed is there. So you might want to go you might need to change that, but it should all auto-change itself, and it's redirecting properly, so it should all work.
So what you're saying, Scott, is if you haven't received this podcast, then do something different. So they won't. If you haven't, you need to resubscribe or something. But if you need to resubscribe, then you might not have. You won't be hearing this unless you've come to the site to say, hey, where's 358?
Well, precisely. Or you might be watching. You might have bumped into the show on the YouTube now.
Indeed.
So you can find you'll find the audio podcast on YouTube. It has its own channel now. So yeah, we can. Hello there.
Because the camera's kind of hidden behind other tabs, I did forget that I was there.
So you can subscribe to YouTube. You can subscribe to us on YouTube as well if you prefer. So if you want to see the video version, you can do that there. Over the next 2 weeks, the video version is going to get a little bit more impressive. There's like some graphics on the way and all that sort of stuff, so that should be pretty cool. So you might want to check that as well. But the one cool feature of the new site, and this is the reason why we've built the new site, is what will actually happen now over the week is when Sam or Scott or I find an item that we think that's going to be on the show, we're going to add it, and that will immediately become available to you. So you can actually see the show items before the show's recorded. We're going to put them up in real time, so you can subscribe to the news part of the site, and it will constantly keep you up to date with all sorts of audio tech developments all week long, which is really cool. And if you want to comment on them, or you think something's horrific and we shouldn't mention it at all, or you think we've missed a really big story, then you can feel free to comment on stuff and let us know. Or as always, you can email us, Facebook us, or G+ us, or Twitter us with, a lead to a story or somebody we should interview if you want to as well. So that should be really cool. Awesome. Should we go plundering?
Arr.
Arr. Into the plunder.
Into the plunder. So, we have Shure mics on Fake Britain. What's this, Scott?
The BBC program Fake Britain, which is all about rip-off and cons and things like that, had a feature about microphones and about Shure microphones, which are apparently there's a massive amount of Chinese rip-off Shure microphones floating around the place at the moment. So it was a little feature. If you're in the UK and you get to it in the next 5 days, I think you can watch it on the iPlayer service. So you can just press the button and go have a look, and it tells you what kind of things to look for. So which I thought was quite useful actually. You made a couple of cool kind of suggestions about things to check if you're buying if you've received a product and you feel the need to question its validity. So that's kind of cool. I thought that was a cool way to pass some time. Another cool one as well. And I think did we mention this? I'd like to think we mentioned this plunder item as a news item, but in case we didn't, it's in as a plunder item, which is that Boss held the 2012 Loop Station World Championships. Awesome.
That seems familiar. I think, yeah.
I think we covered I think we covered the fact it was going to happen, but I don't know if we ever mentioned the fact it had happened. And there is a video of the highlights. My feeling about the use of loop pedals is pretty strong, so I'm not really going to share it. But anyway, Sam, what else is in the plunder?
It's a valid tool. The modem and other endangered sounds. Somebody has created the Museum of Endangered Sound, and somebody else wrote a really nice, an article that I enjoyed about it. So I've linked to those things. So watch out for that. It's got a really good example of SoundCloud timed comments being used. So there's the sound of a dial-up modem dialing up and connecting with annotations saying what all the different squelchy bleepy bloops mean, with some other people have added amusing ones here, there, and everywhere also. So that's good. And then the Museum of Endangered Sounds itself, I'm going to endeavour to load it. No, I won't, because it'll garble my voice on this internet connection. But from memory, it's got, I think it's a work in progress. It's something they're like developing, and it's got things like the Tetris music on there, and basically it's just nostalgic sounds of technology of yesteryear. There we go. Plunder.
Awesome stuff. Well, that's has made it to the end. Yay. This has been the audio podcast, show number 58, Will MIDI Ever Die? I've been Scott Hewitt.
I'm Samuel Freeman.
Bye!
Bye!